So we've heard about the event and a Black Swan event. Now, look up Black Swan and it'll tell you more about what it's allegedly meant to be. But here we go at the moment. Now, us doing things on naval exercises, not naval, military exercises, I should say, with NATO is nothing new. We have done that. However, from what I gather, we've done a lot of training within our own country and brought other forces over here. But at the moment, it says UK to deploy 20,000 troops to NATO. Military drill to practice repelling a Russian invasion. So we're just going to try and piss off the Russians. Meanwhile, I hear that over in the Ukraine, they've even started accepting women in there because they've run out of all the young fighting age men. So then they got their dads in there and they've been processed through the meat grinder and now they're going to get the women in. Makes you wonder whether this has got anything to do with it. It says here, in a speech today, the Defence Secretary is expected to announce that the deployment of the Army, Navy and RAF personnel to the 31-nation steadfast defence military exercise across Europe. And it shows you a lovely picture of a helicopter and a load of blokes running to it. The UK will send 20,000 troops to NATO's biggest military drill since the Cold War. As the alliance practices repelling an invasion of Russian forces, Defence Secretary Grant Shapps is expected to announce today. I did see an interview with him where he did seem to play this one down a bit. We will be the predominant force within that group. And it goes on to say much more. Army, Navy and RAF personnel will be deployed to the 31-nation steadfast defence exercise in a bid to provide vital reassurance against the menace of Vladimir Putin. Mr. Shapps will say in a speech, the Defence Secretary also warns the West stands at a crossroads. Yeah, I suppose if you keep pushing the bear long enough, you probably will end up getting a large case of the claws. As he unveils the UK's contribution to war games in an address at Lancaster House. Fine. Okay, so we know that. Now, a few other things I suppose we should actually mention is this. 3 in 10 soldiers unfit to fight against in a conflict amid growing military recruitment crisis. I have people within the services, and I know that this is the case. So there's almost 30,000 personnel across all 3 services are not fully fit for combat, with the Army worst hit, government figures reveal. Almost 30,000 troops across the UK Armed Forces are medically unfit for combat operations due to psychological and physical injuries and mental health. I know that too, because I've been hearing that some people who are fit look around in their troop and they go, look, these people are massively overweight. They cannot keep up. They can't do the job. But at the moment, the military are struggling to get people to come into the services because, well, why would they want to? I mean, I can think of 101 reasons why somebody might not want to these days. Maybe if somebody's done a bit of research into the military, they find out just how the military treats its people. And they lie to the people, promising the world. And when they get there, actually, it's nothing like that. And if you're really unlucky, you may end up going and fighting a proxy war somewhere where you defend somebody's oil assets, etc. And that leaves people incredibly disillusioned. Not to mention the fact that when you're over there, you could get hit by all sorts of IEDs, have your friends blown up in front of you, and then when you come out of it with PTSD, you get absolutely no help by the services. And if you're lucky, at best, you're going to struggle through the rest of your life with problems of dealing with people, problems of dealing with situations, sleepless nights, anxiety, depression, and all the other beautiful things that go with PTSD. And at worst, you'll get separation issues so bad that you'll fall out with everybody around you because you become unbearable to be around, and you know it. And you can't get close to anybody because of all sorts of things that you've seen and experienced, and you end up either homeless, suicidal, or worse. So yeah, and I should imagine it's quite difficult to get an entire generation of people who have been absolutely pussied around and told that they could be any gender they want in the world, or that their feelings come before everything else, and that they've had their own way for a long time. We've kind of done this to ourselves. So that's one of the problems. And then we got the other problems that our military isn't, well, it goes on about the Navy, but this is one thing. Through a reasonably busy, the Navy is facing its worst crisis and resources, and manning in living memory. Ships are being laid up or taken out of service early for lack of skilled crew. More are leaving than joining, and the same is happening in all 3 services now. For the Army, the Navy, the crisis is becoming acute, and in the past few days, an advert appeared in LinkedIn to recruit a rear admiral at a handsome salary to head up the submarine service. Apparently, no suitable candidates could be found from those currently serving. That's a complete insult to the people that are there, that are sticking it out. What are you going to do? You're going to get some person who's managed a company before to come in and literally deal with our military, naval, nuclear deterrent. Brilliant. What a great idea. The agency Serco advertised for deckhands for the Royal Navy Fleet Auxiliary, which provides vital support, tankers, freighters, and assault of motherships. The ad was swiftly removed as inappropriate for supporting arms to His Majesty's fighting force. Another thing that I'm hearing within the forces at the moment are people are blagging it off and saying they've got mental health problems. Now, some of them may well have been through, in cases, as I've heard, a breakup with the wife or whatever, and obviously that's going to have its problems, but others are actually knowing that they can swing the lead a bit and being able to sit back in barracks and play on the PlayStation. How do I know this? Because I'm being told firsthand. But there it is. So we have massive problems, and this is only going to get worse. Think about this. If you were to research just exactly how many wars we've been in lately, and did we actually, or should we have actually really been there, what would we actually do in defending Britain's interests or some other financial interest of the 1%, where we end up going through a meat grinder, fighting wars with countries that, I don't know, don't politically align with us or some other reason. You only got to look at the recent history. And they're digging up stuff from, I went on to Google today, and it said how they used a naval ship as a defense against incoming Exocet missiles against a carrier. Well, it was Sandy Woodward that actually did that. And he said, well, it's like this. What you do is your carriers are mission critical. You lose a carrier, we only had 2 for the Falklands, you lose the war because they are where your aeroplanes are flying off until you can actually get on the mainland. And in which case, the Vulcan bomber had already stuck a load of bombs up there, so it was useless for heavy aircraft. So you need your carriers. One of them actually went out without one of the propellers working because the gearbox was smashed, and they had to fix it on the way to Ascension. Now, your 2 carriers are most important, and then you have a ring of ships going out further and further. And then what happens is, right out there in the distance is the Atlantic Conveyor. The Atlantic Conveyor was a merchant ship that we had, I think it was 4 or 5 heavy lift helicopters on it, which were Chinooks. And we had some other helicopters as well as a lot of our supplies. Now, the French were selling the Exocets, I should say, to the Argentinians. The Argentinians only had so many Exocets, and they'd already used a load on the Sheffield and the Coventry, and I think a few others, and I can't remember which ones. But it was looking pretty bad, and they were coming in so low over the land that they actually were below the radar, so they couldn't get picked up. But it gave them an envelope of time, which was literally split seconds, to pop up, get a lock on, and launch. So that's exactly what they did, and they hit the conveyor, which ended up sinking it. Now, it cost the lives of innocent people. Well, I say innocent. People that go to war, what can you say they're innocent or not innocent? I don't know, but they were good people anyway. So it's one of those things that, yeah, I'd like to say they were innocent, but they were working for our merchant fleet, so the enemy see them as not innocent. That's probably the best way to relate, isn't it? Anyway, the loss of the Atlantic Conveyor did actually save the aircraft carrier, which saved the entire war. And it was fought on a knife's edge. We were pushed to our limits. There was a lot of mission and weapons systems that were starting to fail. Don't forget, we'd lost the Sheffield and the Coventry. Now, John Knott, prior to that, had been making military cuts, which is exactly what we're doing at the moment. He'd mothballed the amphibious fleet and had to pull it out, which wasn't very good. But also, the cuts they've made, say, for instance, the Coventry and the Sheffield, both of them were supposed to have 2 weapon systems each. But because they were trying to save money, they shortened the ship and put one weapon system on one and one on the other. One was Seawolf and one the other was Sea Dart. And it's alleged that at the time of the crisis, that the captain was making an unnecessary call back to the UK via his radio system, so they had to turn the radar off for it. Whether that's entirely true, I don't know. But as a consequence, we lost those ships and we lost good men. And we lost quite a lot of ships in that event, as did the Argentinians. They lost the Belgrano after our naval... this is another thing. We had the Conqueror, I believe it was, that sank it. Anyway, they've been given finally the rights to engage. They pressed the buttons and nothing happened. So somebody down right next to where the tubes are, right, where the fish is, actually had to put the events in, because there was a system of air events, had to put them in manually for the fish to go. So I think they let off 3 fish to it, and that was it. It was game over. Now, a lot of people said that was murder. They were outside the exclusion zone. Yes, but they were working on a pincer movement, which is coming around, which was going to completely annihilate our ships if they had the chance. So unlucky, mate. You just come onto a piece of land that wasn't yours and you were pissing us off. So you got it. That's the system. That's how it works. But that's war also. And speaking of war, are we trying to find ourselves another war at the moment? Because we've committed ourselves at the moment to the Red Sea to police that, and yet we can't even police our own bloody English Channel from the invading army that's coming into our country right now. But we seem to be able to spare the cash. And how many billion have we just sent the meat grinder over in Ukraine? That's a war we can't win and never could. And the thing is, if we'd listened to the Russians with their complaint about how many thousands of Russian-speaking people in Ukraine have been massacred by that small little genocide going on over there. If the Western world had actually listened to that and done something, none of this would happen. But since I think it's the 50s and 60s, we've been pushing NATO ever closer to Russia. Why? Well, I suppose that's what we do, isn't it? Expansionist. Now, we had the Cold War, and now we've got another Cold War. Now, you always ask yourself, who gains out of this? Well, if you look at how much the military in the UK and the military in, say, for instance, America, trillions for the Americans, billions for us, that we spent on weapon systems to defend ourselves from the Cold War, from the Red Peril, call it what you want, right? Who owns the shares in those companies? Who profits from the sale of weapons? One of our biggest exports going back was landmines. And if you have a look at Lady Di, was a great person who went around the world bringing attention to this, and she wasn't very liked by the armaments industry, that's for sure. She used to sit there with people who'd lost limbs and speak up and say that this is a bad thing, and I think it is, but that's just my thought. What do I know? However, Great Britain has made quite a career out of selling munitions to people all around the world. Some of them are very unsavoury as well. And our closest allies have done the same thing. The French have sold weapons to people that, well, at our time we were at war with. But the Americans have sold weapons to their enemy. You don't just sell it direct to them. Of course, you go through a side company, Black Ops and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, there it is. So it makes me wonder just how bad things are going to get this year. But we are seriously pulling on the Pilsner of people that we probably shouldn't be having anything to do with. Is it our war? This is a question. Ukraine, you pissed off the wrong person. Fuck you. You're trouble. Couldn't give a fuck about you, asshole. Now, there's innocent people within Ukraine, I should say, I care about, but the leadership of Ukraine, no, bunch of cunts, right? And if you look at the moment with the thing that's going on between Israel and the opposition over there, that's not our problem. It's not our war. We shouldn't be getting involved. But there it is. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. More content to come. Like, share, and subscribe. Apparently, I've always got to mention that because I keep forgetting. And I'll see you in a bit.